Hey Gengar Gang, what is going on? My name is Ryan, this is the Analytic Gengar, and welcome to another video. In today's video, friends, we talk about prices dropping. In an unsurprising and perhaps interesting turn of events, the 25th anniversary of Pokemon has really underwhelmed in a lot of interesting ways. Obviously, there are still massive shortages of Pokemon cards in the modern market, and specifically in the vintage market, we've been encountering some very interesting trends and patterns within the market that have left people really kind of scratching their heads. Obviously, in late 2020, particularly around October, we saw a huge boom for Pokemon, where basically everything was selling at all-time highs. And a lot of people have then begun scratching their heads and wondering, well, what's next for Pokemon? We were told the 25th anniversary was going to be this huge year, and yet for some reason, prices continue to decline. But in today's video, I'm here to break down some of the more technical elements of why prices might be declining, and B, providing some words of encouragement, because I do believe that in the YouTube community, but just generally across the board, we are a little short for that nowadays, because many people are either beating their chest telling you, I told you so, prices were going to drop, or screaming from the top of the mountains, oh no, the market's dropping, what are we going to do? And so in today's video, I really wanted to take some time to dissect both of those types of sentiments and really kind of draw a middle ground where you can hopefully come to a better overall understanding of the market, and hopefully just, take a deep breath and realize that this isn't the end of the world, and there's a very clear reason why you shouldn't think this is the end of the world. So without further ado, let's get right on into it, friends. As you can see on screen right now, I have the Blastoise Holo First Edition. Now, unsurprisingly, I am the proud owner of one of these, and this is why I think my opinion is valid, because, some folks would go ahead and, panic or not panic, but not necessarily be a holder of the card. Obviously, many of you know based on my videos, especially that trade video, I showed off this exact card. And so the price difference between March of 2021 and April of 2021 has been interestingly painful to watch. I'm talking about a price dip of about $14,000. We're talking about a 33% decline in price, which at first glance is really painful. Now, interestingly enough, there are tons of different reasons why this may have been the case. As you can see, here is the card, and good looking card. Can't really see a reason why it was artificially deflated in price compared to any equivalent card. And as you can see, the sales history on this card is really interesting to say the least. So if we take a look at it, starting with the most recent sale, which was just last week, you'll see that it sold for about $31,000, right? In as early as March of this year, it was selling for $44,000. Prior to that, we saw $31,975, we saw $35,300, we saw $27,300, we saw $4,500, we saw, I'm going to ignore the best offer there. And then really, realistically, the last thing we saw before that was a $20,000 card that was purchased about a year ago today. So this bouncing up and down also coincides with some major market movers. As you can see, the $20,000 price tag was at the onset of the sort of larger Pokemon boom last year. And then obviously towards November, we saw some really interesting kind of bouncing that occurred, mainly because we saw PWCC auction set the price here. Then we saw another auction set the price here. Then, we had another random tidbit here. The only real pattern that I'm able to observe is that when you take advantage of a boom period in Pokemon, obviously you can pull off any price you want on eBay. But other than that, you'll notice that the eBay listings are probably consistently lower. The only other real purchase that went off with a large number was the Golden Auctions winner in the March auction. So they pulled a price very similar to the high price from last year. Other than that, you'll notice that pretty consistently the price is about $30,000. So what does this mean? $31,000 is still pretty significant for a card. One of the things that a lot of people fail to mention whenever they talk about prices is taking a look at the bigger picture. If I highlight just this on screen right now, it causes a lot of concern for a lot of people. Like I said, I own this exact card, different cert number, but the exact same PSA 10 Gem Mint Blastoise First Edition base set card. Am I panicked? No. Am I sad the price went down? Yeah, but it's also natural for prices to ebb and flow with the times. But here's something that many people will fail to mention. If you look at what's on screen right now, like I said, it's very terrifying, but how about I just scroll down like a little bit? Like, oh, I don't know, circa the YouTube channel starting. Had I had the card back then, look at the price difference. Like, at its highest, I was about 10 times in the money. Literally. And even right now, that card has gone up by about 6 times. So even though the price has come down from 45,000 to about 30,000, it is still approximately 6 times as much as it was when the YouTube channel got started. So that just goes to show you how, if people really just force you to look at the data points on screen, it can be really misleading. And all you need to do is literally move the mouse down a little bit. And I realize how, accurate and appropriate a analogy that is, but, it just so happens that the data shown on screen really kind of tells the story in a far more compelling way than what you might expect otherwise. So that's actually really interesting, because it's one of those situations where, as we look back in the history of the card, obviously it's had its ebbs and flows. It peaked up here, but then it also dropped over here. So obviously there are some really interesting ups and downs for this particular card. But what I will say is that I definitely encourage you to look at the larger picture, which is that in the long run, in about a year and a half's time, it's gone up by about 6 times as much value, and that's using the low number. Again, using the high number is a little bit more deceiving, and although I do agree with the sentiment that if we're going to use PWCC prices to value the card during the boom periods, we should also use PWCC numbers to evaluate the low periods, what I will say is that there's more than enough factors to differentiate this sale from this sale. And I think the major driver is probably, the back end of the Logan Paul hype. Versus here, where it's kind of like there's a little bit of pocket fatigue. You know what I mean? If you really look at it, and let's just, take a moment to appreciate what we're seeing here. In 2020, we quite literally saw, pre-Logan Paul, we saw 3 auctions or 3 sales occur, right? So from the months of January to October, we saw 3 auctions or sales take place, right? In the give or take 6 months since Logan Paul, so November, December, January, February, March, and April, we've seen literally double that in sales volume. So that could be another major factor that is playing a role here. Again, if you chop 2020 into pre and post Logan Paul, in literally the 6 months that since, we've seen double the amount of sales than we have in the first 3 quarters of 2020. That alone should tell you that people are starting to look in their closets and find this stuff, or people are just motivated finally to sell this stuff. And as a result, I expect to see this type of up and down type of behavior, because at a certain point, the market may be inundated. I mean, geez, when you're selling literally 3 of them within what is effectively a 4-week period, of course the prices are going to hop all around the place, because people don't know. You might buy this card low, which then motivates the next guy to sell, but then this person makes big bank, and so this guy's like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to list this at a 2-week auction on PWCC, because if this guy got 35, I'm going to get 35. He didn't. Take a notice that in the 3-month gap since, the price went up again, because now there was a little bit of market scarcity. And then notice how a month later another one sells, and they're like, oh geez, another one? I think I'm just gonna bid low on this one and see if I win. And that's kind of what happened. Now, am I saying that's exactly how people thought about this and exactly how they behaved? No. But again, we have 2 really important data points here: the date and the price. We also have the auction house. So you can very clearly see how we can observe patterns within the data, and we can make some really interesting conclusions, or at least hypotheses based on what we're seeing. So some main things to take away. One, when someone shows you what's on screen right now, make sure to consider scrolling down by a little bit, because it tells a far more important story, and that's that in the long run, Pokemon is a very healthy investment asset. May I just say, ignore the high price for a minute and just look at the low price. We're talking 6 times your value in about a year and a half's time. Mind you, the stock market on average yields about 10% per year. We're talking 600% return on investment in a year and a half. You cannot beat that type of margin. The other thing to bear in mind is that you gotta watch the density of the market here. At this point, you gotta wonder if we're starting to see inundation in the market and pocket fatigue, and those two things aren't driving the way that people behave. In my opinion, I want the market to cool off. I am in a position where I'm tempted to sell my 2 cards, but I'm also hoping one day they can pay for like a mansion. I don't know which is going to happen, but I certainly wouldn't be going out of my way to list my stuff right now. I'm not going to list next month with the intention of hoping that it sells for at or around the same price. If I'm lucky, a situation like this will play out, but other than that, I'm really not pressed, because it's one of those situations where it's like there's just too many of these flying around the market now. There's no specialness to them. If every month we have another winter auction special super awesome pristine run, or whatever the hell they call these things, because every single month we're getting one of these, and you can see the one time they take a little break in between, it does wonders for the price of the card. So that's my own 2 cents on the topic. I did want to also show you guys the Rayquaza Gold Star, obviously another card that I own, and so definitely something to observe. This one is a bit different, but you know, kind of the same thing applies, right? This card, mind you, is in far more scarce quantities than the Blastoise. What you'll notice is that for the year 2020, there were a whopping 4 transactions, which is approximately about give or take 9% of the total. Assuming each of these is a unique cert number, yeah, we're seeing about a 9% total turnover, because one thing that is really interesting is that there's only, I believe, 47 of these cards in the world, and so we're talking about a very, very low quantity and population card, meaning that whenever you see 4 sales in the same year, you're looking at about like close to 8 or 9% of the total population of the cards being sold. That's actually pretty impressive when you look at it that way. So as you can see, the price on this just consistently skyrocketed. This is a best offer, so we'll have to assume it was sold for a lower price. I would argue it probably went for around the same here. And as you can see, these 3 prices basically coincide. This is practically the end of 2019. And so you can kind of see that there was a nice little trickle, and then in May it spiked big time, and then it spiked again at the end of the year. And then 3.7 wasn't that bad either, very close to, if not similar. What I've noticed is that for many of these high-end PSA 10 cards, the PWCC run in December, which I believe is always a big Pokemon-focused one, had some really high prices. And then what you'll notice is that the winter auctions were pretty close. The auction house Golden also had a sort of their version of the PSA year-end bonanza, and you'll notice that the prices are borderline similar in more or less cases. And now we've seen a little bit of a tail off. PWCC just ran a huge auction that had some pretty impressive grades, and as you can see, the price is about 10% or about 9% less than what it was in March. So again, overall huge dip, but again, on screen right now you're seeing a really interesting story. I encourage you to scroll down just a little bit more, you know what I mean? Go back into 2020 or 2019 rather, you'll see that it was about a $7,000 card. This is actually one of the cards that I purchased in 2019 for about $7,000, and as you can see, as of right now, I am still a huge winner, again, about, give or take, 6 times the amount that I spent, and there are tons of folks who are in a similar situation. At the end of the day, I think one of the reasons people are behaving so erratically right now, is mainly because of the basis that they carry for the cards, right? So again, I try to make it very clear in my videos what I own and what I don't own, so that you all as viewers know my motivations, right? Obviously, I can have a certain amount of bias because of the cards that I have, right? I could try to get out here and tell you, oh my goodness, this stuff, like, this sucks, but don't worry, the market's coming back up and Blastoise is going to be a $60,000 card. Obviously, that's a bias because I have that card and I hope it sells for $60,000. I would love that, but probably not going to be the case. More importantly, I want to make it very clear what parts of the video are subjective versus what parts of the video are objective. And in this particular case, I chose to highlight these two cards for that exact same reason. I own both of the cards, but I'm not pressed, and there's a couple reasons why I'm not pressed. Like I said, a lot of the folks who are out here screaming about an apocalyptic event are probably doing so because they're stressed about their basis. Basically, they probably bought at or around right here, and so to see this means that, you know, in the course of 4 months, you've more or less lost about, you know, $4,000. Assuming you invested $1 million, you know, you probably lost somewhere in the range of like $100,000. And it's tough to think that Pokemon, this juggernaut that all throughout 2020 was a consistently strong performer, is now seeing some retracing. So that's definitely one of the main motivations why folks may be panicking and maybe either pushing out content or having a very negative sentiment about this overall retrace. As many of you may be aware, retraces are a natural part of just the society we live in. If you look back here, right, here's a solid example of a retrace. 3 auctions in a row, you know, sells for 65, sells for 76, sells for 6,000, sells for 8,100, sells for 8,500, sells for 87. You know, as you can see, it just goes up and down, up and down. That's the whole point. That's how markets behave. We were in a major booming time, and so now we are in a major, not recessionary time, but certainly a time of stagnation and certainly a time of slow growth, if anything. Does this mean it's the end of Pokemon? No. And believe it or not, a lot of people will want to see this card go back down to being a $100 card. I don't even know if PSA has history for that. Yeah, back in 2017, it was like a $3,700 card. A lot of people would like to see that happen, and I'm objectively saying this, not just because I own the card, but I doubt that'll ever happen, because as SM Pratt very frequently says, if the market were to reset today, there are players out there who would just keep outbidding each other until we ended back up in the same situation. That's literally the whole principle of this thing, is that even this card started at $1, and then guess what? Someone kept bidding and someone kept bidding, and here we are, right? So even if someone listed this card for $1 tomorrow and genuinely wanted to sell it at that, someone would get in their ear and say, no, I'll offer you 10, I'll offer you 20, I'll offer you 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, so on, so on. And that's literally the principles of the market at play. So that's one thing to consider, right? Whenever you see someone being negative or someone definitely looking at this as like a huge apocalyptic type event, like the Pokemon market's crashing, bro, what are we going to do? Just bear in mind that, you know, motivations may be coming into play, and that investments on their end, or, you know, that represent their interests, may be conflicting with what it is they're saying. That's definitely something that's kind of annoying to me, as I've gone about sort of, you know, reading forums and looking at comments and watching content, is that, you know, sometimes it's very transparent and other times it's a little bit more wrapped up, but you kind of get the idea that, you know, folks are motivated by what they're seeing their own individual collection ebb and flow by, and we do have to be mindful of that, right? I think transparency is the best way of going about this, because at the end of the day, you can, you know, make those approximations, but just also disclaim, like, hey, you know, here's where I'm at, and here's why I'm coming at it from this angle. The other thing to bear in mind when it comes to this stuff is that there are other people who will be celebrating this, and that's probably, like me, they bought the card for like this much back in the day, so they don't care. You know, they're living the life, whether it sells right here or right here. They don't really care. They're big time in the money, and so, you know, they're saying this is a dip, but it's not the end of the world. Bear in mind those intentions as well, because I do believe that while we should celebrate the fact that, you know, there are many individuals who have, you know, certainly developed a significant amount of equity in their collection, I don't necessarily think now's the time to to now, you know, go say like, keep buying, keep buying. Obviously, you know, no one knows what the market is going to do other than the market. and the market isn't going to tell us. So the market could dip down even a little further. It really wouldn't surprise me. You know, as we just covered in this video, the Blastoise went down by 33%. This is only about 10%. There's a variety of factors at play as to why that is. It could be that first edition base just got beat up really bad. It could also be that the gold stars are a little bit more resilient because they're lower in population. I don't know. It could be a combination of factors that I haven't listed or that I have listed. The truth of the matter is, though, it could stand to go down even further. Alternatively, someone could come out tomorrow with some crazy new content and go ahead and push the market right back up. Who knows? Here's what I do know, and this is where I'll start concluding the video, is that obviously there's tons of motivations in the market, but I hope today's video has sort of lent you an additional lens to look at things through. Because obviously many YouTube creators, many content creators, many commentators, whether they be in the comment section on Twitter, on Facebook, on Reddit, wherever, we all have motivations, and sometimes they can conflict with the objective truth, the empirical truth, or the subjective truth. And so I just want to remind everyone to bear those things in mind, right? Everyone can have opinions. Like, I have an opinion that the market's going to go up towards the end of the year. I'll explain a little bit more about that momentarily. But while that is my opinion and hopefully will impact my collection in a positive way, I do have to also parse out what is the objective truth from my subjective reality, because I don't want to give you all an indication that things are, Pokemon is coming to an end and you should liquidate your entire collection because it's all coming to an end and oh no, what are we going to do? Don't panic. Like I said, stuff has been growing and is continuing to grow. If you look back just a little further to 2019, you'll see that Pokemon is in a very healthy state, and although it's currently in a situation where it's, kind of stagnating, kind of slowing down, retracing a little bit, that's perfectly normal, perfectly healthy, and allows an opportunity for the big players in the game, as well as the overall micro and macro economies, to reset, reposture, and reevaluate what the next investment decisions are. And that is going to provide the next wave of capital and investments into our hobby. In terms of my own thoughts and theories on what's going to happen next, I personally believe there's one truth that, regardless of how subjective or objective I've been in today's video, remains the truth. We are in the 25th anniversary of Pokemon. This is that year. The other thing I will say is that the year is still very young. It's only May. And as many people as may not like to hear it, all that means is that, 5 months are done, 7 still remain. And so even though we've seen some retracing in the market, there's still tons of things that can influence the way this year ends. I think a big one is going to be the release of the various video games throughout the years. So things like Pokemon Snap, which recently came out in April, which was last month. We also have the Diamond and Pearl remakes, and then we also have modern sets which will be coming out in, I assume, increasing velocity. So Chilling Reign looks to be probably one of the fan favorite sets of the Sword and Shield era. We'll also have the Eevee Evolutions, whatever they're going to call it, set. And so I think all those things plus many more, right? Leonhardt has indicated that Rare Candy will be launching their inaugural auctions, which I think could provide a boost to the market. I bet my life they're probably also going to do a crap ton of advertising around that, so that's probably going to create a lot of market hype. And that's just, what I assume is going to happen. Then we don't know what people are planning and haven't done yet, right? So imagine this. It's the end of the year. It's the 25th anniversary. Your big favorite YouTubers plan something really amazing, right? Again, more content, more hype, more, in a weird way, advertising for Pokemon. And what does that do? Effectively, that just creates a huge wave of compounding effects that cause growth in a market. So to summarize my point, give it a few months, just take a break. If you have money right now and you're liquid, buy the dip. If you ask me, I've been doing a lot of that. I think it's a good time, you know what I mean? Seems like people are still in the general mindset of, hey, I can liquidate my asset for my collection for quite a bit of money, and although it's not at the highest, you can definitely compete for some pretty neat collections. You'll see a few of those actually coming up in videos that I have planned for the future, where I'm going to do a lot more mail days, mainly because I've been buying a lot more. And so that's kind of my overall attitude right now. And then, you know, minding my own liquidity, I'm not stressed. Why am I not stressed? Because as any good collector or any good investor knows, you got to keep enough funds for a rainy day. And I'm in a situation where I'm not pressed. So for what it's worth, the prices can dip 33%, they can dip 50%. I know one of these days someone's going to do or say something, or Logan Paul's going to open up another one of his boxes, and we're going to have another October 2020 on our hands. You know, the objective truth is that markets are cycles, and Pokemon is no exception. But with that said, friends, thanks again for checking out another video. I do hope you found today's content interesting, and if you did, feel free to leave a like on the video. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think of the recent retraces? And do you think it's here to stay? It's a period of time that we're going to be seeing this? Or are you of the attitude that perhaps the October 2020 height was something that we're going to have to slowly recover from and is going to take years to build back up towards? Either way, let me know down below in the comments, and I hope you found today's video interesting and hopefully a little insightful and lending you a different perspective than what you might be seeing out there on the World Wide Web. As always, I appreciate your viewership. You could have been anywhere on the internet, but you chose to spend some time with me, and that means the world. Other than that, friends, thanks again for checking out another video, and we will talk soon. Peace.